Welcome back, everybody. Hope you all have had your lunch. We have a few more presentations to go, and we have amazing Roger Kilimanjaro all the way from Paris, France, here. He is an amazing 3D artist who is apparently obsessed with beautiful looping animations. His work is really stunning, and I had an opportunity to meet him last year in Paris, and it's really hard to get hold of him, but I finally did. He does brilliant work. Please follow him on Instagram. Amazing stuff. You can also scan to download the assets and play around with the work of artists. And I'll let Roger take ahead. Go for it.
Thank you, Karen. So, hey everyone. Thank you for joining. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Maxon, for having me. So my name's Roger Kilimanjaro. I've been doing 3D for almost 12 years now. And I've always been fairly obsessed with looping animation. And I've been using Cinema 4D pretty much all years. So it's an honor to be here presenting. So before getting into the presentation, I'll show you my show reel, which is a bit of client and personal work. Let's go. All right. So pretty simple presentation in two parts. First time the loops, and second the satisfaction. So I've made a great number of loops along during the years, from weird golden noodle machine to slicing stuff, melting stuff. It's a lot of fun. The question is why making something loop? I think there is some advantages, but also disadvantages. For the pros, well, it looks cool. You don't know where it starts, where it ends. It's kind of hypnotical. It can add to the story you're trying to tell. So if you want to convey some ideas of infinity, repetition, or a moment suspended in time, it's an excellent problem-solving exercise. When you want to loop something, you will encounter a lot of problems, and yeah, it's a very good practice. This one is a bit shallow, but user will usually spend a bit more time on the animation, trying to find the end and stuff. So, for example, this loop is like 1 second, which is pretty impressive because you want to watch it for a long time. There is some disadvantages, of course. It's a bit more work, usually a lot more work. I think, in my opinion, a bad loop is worse than no loop. If you forget a tiny detail or you have a jump in frames, I mean, if you want to go seamless loop, you have to commit. And third, it can feel a bit gimmicky. At the end of the day, if you want to tell a story, it doesn't have necessarily to loop, and sometimes it's not worth it. Without being too technical, I would like to just give you a very basic idea of the loop science. The main idea is really simple. The animation has to start and to end with the same frame. So far, pretty simple. So each element of the animation have to follow the same rules. So if you have an animation on a certain part or your camera, First and end frame have to be the same coordinate, etc. You can have some element looping inside of the loop. So for example, 2 times, 3 times. But all you have to make sure is that the duration is a fraction of the total loop length. So every time it loops, it comes back also to the first frame. At some point, you will need to offset the tracks, for example, to synchronize something or to really tweak exactly how you want the choreography of everything coming together. So to maintain the loop, you have to duplicate the tracks. So having the keyframes continue, so you come back to the loop even if it's offsetting. I'll show you in practice what this means. So I have this loop, for example, where I have some elements looping, and I wanted it to be like very synchronized to the beats. So I had to really like tweak at the exact frame when I wanted, for example, the pyramid to explode and stuff like that. So in practice, yeah, I prepared like a simplified version of the scene. So you have a 60-second long loop, everything is looping correctly. But as soon as I want to tweak a little bit, for example, if I decide to like offset this animation, of course the loop is broken. So the idea is really to repeat the animation before and after. So there is really a quick way of doing it. For example, if you select the track, so you see we have the 2 loops, and then you have this property where you can repeat before the loop. So you can see it's repeating, and also after. And now, as you can see, the loop is repaired. And no matter how much you offset, the loop will still continue. So that's pretty cool. Basically, that's the main simple core idea of what a loop is in terms of keyframes. But one thing that is particularly harder to loop for simulation, you have to first bake the simulation. So you have, each time it loops, you have the same results because of their random nature. Simulation can be different each time you play it. So if you bake it and duplicate it, you should be good. So, for example, this is an animation I made recently, and I had this wall of tiles falling. And as you can see, each time it falls, the next iteration of the simulation starts, and it's always the same results. Oops, sorry. It's always the same results, so you get this continuity between each simulation. But one thing that really sells the effect, I think, is to overlap the simulation, which means you have to make a longer simulation compared to the length of your loops. So you can overlap them, meaning when the loop starts, you have a tiny bit of the end of the simulation that's playing at the same time. So you really get this feeling of continuity. As you can see, when I play this one, as the next one starts, the previous one is still finishing. So you really get this fluid motion. And I think it's really amplify the looping aspect. So I've prepared like a simplified scene to show you what it means in practice. So I have this wall of tile falling, simple animation. And once you've cached it or baked it, like it will run exactly the same each time. Once you get that, you can bake it into an Alembic which is like rasterize the simulation and all the geometry into like one object that you can then offset in time. So there is this option, merge generated, that really merge all the parts together, and you get one single object that's really easy to handle next. So you export it. Can now hide the other one, and then you get this looping, sorry, not looping yet. You get this animation, very fluid. And now to get the looping aspect we talked about, we have to duplicate. So I'm going to duplicate this one. And now for them to loop, I have to subtract the duration of the loop. Let's say, for example, we have here 120 frames. If I want a 60 frame loop, I just need to like subtract 60 frames. To this one. So here I have the little bits that will finish at the start, and then the next one can occur. So as you can see, we have the same state for this one, but we have a little problem. There is nothing behind, so we have to do the opposite. I can duplicate this one, but I will offset it in the future, basically. So I've put it like 60 frames. And now what you have is a perfectly looping loop with simulation. But the effect is nice, but as you can see, if I hide everything, they are intersecting. So what's cool in the example I showed you, it's like you have this constant motion. So each time a wall of tiles fall, the camera is slightly moving, so you get really this impression of infinity. So it's very easy to do once you get this setup. You can, like, for example, offset a few centimeters back for this one. Oops, let's say 4 centimeters. And the future one, you can add 4. And now they're not overlapping. But as you can see, as we offset them, we don't have the same end frame. It's like a little bit off. And to compensate, we have to animate the camera. So basically, I parented the camera to a null. Here it is. And when I move this null, the camera is traveling, basically. So if I go back to the camera, and if I animate the camera from 0 to 4 centimeters, and make it a linear movement, so we get really discontinuity. Then we go back to the same frame at the end and at the start. So now you have a really good looping simulation. One last detail, it's 60 frames long, but as our rule says, the first frame and the end frame must be the same, so we have a repetition of the same frame. So basically all you have to do is to subtract one frame, and then you have a perfectly seamless looping animation. All right. So that's mainly it for the looping part. For this next part, satisfaction. A little disclaimer, of course, satisfaction is highly subjective. There is no like perfect recipe to make something satisfying per se. But I just want to share my approach and what I've learned along the way. So what I found really efficient is to really start with a simple core idea. Like you want really to extract what makes something enjoyable to watch and present it in a minimal way. At least that's what I do in my work. I like to use some really like grounded and realistic material, so you get something closer to reality, and you have a better time connecting with it, so you want to almost touch it or eat it sometimes. A good rhythm, of course, is very important to really get this sense of continuity and repetition. Also, well-timed action, for example, as the lime is in the air, the slicing occurs when it's just at the peak of its jump. So it's really like a dance or a choreography, and it's really an important aspect. Of course, the seamless loop really helps a lot amplify this feeling of satisfaction. You get this fluidity. And last but not least, I think a lot of my work revolves around playfulness and fun. And yeah, Cinema 4D is a great toolbox and sandbox to really play with material, physics, textures and stuff. And I think if you want to convey some kind of satisfaction in the result, you have to be satisfying with the process. So it's a lot of play, basically. So next, I wanted to share my latest exploration following this approach. So I have this very interesting piece I made. I've been lately really into this kind of transformative, transitioning material where you have several layers of matter that overlap themselves. I think it's pretty cool. And what's funny about this one is that it doesn't include simulation. I love simulation, but sometimes they take a lot of time and effort. And I learned that if you cut the right corner, you can get a very similar result in a very, very much lighter way and easier way. So in practice, what this means, I have this one here. So basically I have this simplified version. I'm going to show you. Oops, sorry. Sorry. Render view. All right. So basically, this is the first layer of gold. So as you can see, there is no simulation and stuff. It's all happening in the material. So let me show you from the start. So if I create a new material, there you go. So basically what I do is I'm using a ramp which is like a gradient from black to white. Let me solo it. So if I change the direction, sorry, in this case horizontal, you get this gradient from the top to the bottom. And if you pinch the gradient like so, you get a nice separation, so you get two distinct parts. And basically what I did is I animated the UVs here. So basically I'm offsetting the U of the texture. And then there is this really cool aspect of the ramp. You can customize. It has a noise parameter. And if you crank it up, you get this liquidy effect. That's really cool. Let me just find a good spot I had in my previous one. There you go. Yeah, you can really get some interesting results. And once you get that, you have to connect both material. Let's say our white part is the gold and our black part is the blue. So all you have to do is to blend both material with a material blender. And I have my material ready here. If I create a reference for the gold, a reference for the clay one. So basically I have my two materials. The base material is the clay and the other is the gold. and basically you map it to the black and white value. So you get this kind of result basically. So that's the main idea of the loop. And when you scroll, you can see it falling down. But it lacks a bit of details, I think. And really, like, I think the interesting part of this animation, maybe I can show you in full so you get a better sense. So yeah, basically I added multiple layers to really like complexify the loop. And you get this really like 3D displaced effect on the liquids to really give this impression of it's a real like matter really descending on the object. So how I did that is actually pretty simple. It's with a displacement. So if I had a displacement and I copy my ramp and plug it in on the displacement. Sorry, up. Sorry. Take. Oh yeah, I've soloed the note. There you go. You get this really matter effect, a bit displaced, and of course you can amplify it. Sorry, not this one. In this section. So if you want more or less organic matter. But what's really cool with gradients is that you can sculpt really how the profile of your liquid. For example, if I go back to my ramp and I start adding some color nodes, for example, a black one, you're starting to get this transition. Basically, when it's black, there is no like height, and when it's white, you get all the sorry, how do you say, the thickness of the material. So basically, with sculpting a little bit, you can really get some interesting results. For example, if you add a bit of gray in the middle, you can really get this sense of liquid, which is really fun. Maybe a bit too much on the displacement. But yeah, basically you get this really interesting effect, and it's really fast, because of course it's just texture work. So yeah, that's basically how I did this one. So I've used this technique a lot because I love it so much. It has a lot of use, I think. And lately I've upgraded a little bit. So instead of using ramps, I've used vertex map, which give a bit more organic aspect to the transformation. If I show you the results. So now you get this really cool, like, random growth effect that works really well. And yeah, I think this one works really well. So basically, it's the same method. Where is it? Here. So it's basically the same method, yeah. So if unless I'm using the correct. So if I add a vertex map to the thing, basically a vertex map is like a different map with data. So like red is 0 and yellow is 1, for example. If I use transfer to be able to use field with vertex map, which is very powerful, I animated this little drop actually, which triggered the animation. So as you can see, it's just falling on the cube, and I can add this drop to the vertex map, and when it comes close to the object, you have some values. So basically, one when it's yellow, and you have a gradient of values that you can use for driving different effects. So let me show you how it works. So you get this one. I can reduce a little bit the radius. So basically, it's like the impact of the droplets. Let's say 7. And when you get that, you have this modifier layer that's called freeze, and you have this function. Clear. This function of grow, which basically like extend the zone, the yellow zone to at a certain speed. So now, if I just need to add it, and now when I play it back, when the drop will fall, like the vertex will entirely cover the object. It's a bit fast, so I can just tone down the effect, let's say 10%, and maybe reduce to 5. So now it should be, so we come back to this very organic, like slow and covering the object. Also, one thing which is nice to do to add a little bit of randomness, it's to add a shader fill, which basically you can add some noise to the overall animation, so you get more randomness and organic growth. If you overlay and add some, sorry. Yes. So noise, and basically there you can see you get much more variation. So now it's a bit extreme, but if I tone down a little bit the, let's say, the contrasts of the noise, you get something a bit more subtle, but yet a lot more details. And now if I go back to Redshift, sorry, I don't have. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. I have to work with the material now. So basically, my vertex map is named vertex map. Let's call it grow. And now in my materials, let me start from scratch. You have the parameter where you can find your vertex attributes. We call it grow. And now what you get, it's a black and white map, similar to the gradient we had. And you can basically do the same thing we did earlier, which is adding details in the gradients of the black and white. So basically what I did was this one. Call it grow. So that's the original material I had. And yeah, so that's how you get this really cool wavy, liquidy effect. And if I zoomed in, so basically, yeah, I did the same thing. You have your, black and white map. It's transitioning to both material. So I made a glass one and a tile one, which is green. And in the displacement part, I made like this more elaborate gradients, where following the same rules. When it's white, you get some thickness, and when it's dark, you get nothing. And in between, it's a lot of waves and stuff. So you really get this effect in the end. There you go. can see better. So yeah, that's how I made it. And yeah, that's it for me, guys. I hope you had a good time. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I'll be in the back if you have some questions or stuff. And yeah, thank you.